So the other day on the Drummerworld Forums, I ran across this post. Why most of the drummers don't want to be leaders. The OP states, I take as an example a genre such as jazz, where 95% of the drummers, if not more, are session musicians both live and in studio, and none of them ever worked on anything with them as the center of a project. A large proportion of them spend their lives and talents serving third parties. Isn't this an absurd waste of talent? Now, I've spent large swaths of my adult life in the Army as a leader, and also as a working drummer in a variety of musical situations. So I feel like I'm well equipped to dig deeper into this question. Can drummers be leaders? Spoiler, the answer is yes, and maybe not. Welcome to Al's Drum Hang. First, let's describe leadership as a general quality. I've always loved the Army's definition found in Field Manual FM 622 because I feel not only does it describe leadership from the military, but just in a general sense. It defines leadership as the process of influencing people by providing purpose, direction, and motivation while operating to accomplish the mission and improve the organization. You're either a positional leader, in other words, you're named to the position, or you're an expert, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the first one, we know a lot of named leaders because they're the bosses of the world. They've been placed in that position, and therefore they have the authority. Like at work, you have somebody who's your boss, and you kind of have to do what they say in order to be at that job. However, the other type of leader is an expert leader. This is somebody who has a special set of skills or understands something better than anybody else. And that gives them the authority in situations where that skill or knowledge is important. You may not be the named leader, you may not be the boss, but you're the only person at your office who knows how to prepare that TPS report and send it to regional correctly. That gives you a lot of expert authority when it comes time to submit those reports. Let's apply this to the music scene. There's multiple distinct things going on in any musical band or project, all of which need somebody in charge of those things. Many times a band will say, oh, we share all our duties. We're all equal. Nobody's a leader. Usually, though, there's somebody who's better at this one thing or that one thing than anybody else in the band, and they become the expert leader in that area. Usually, there's one or two people who excel at promoting or booking the band. There's one or two people who are really the best at musical direction, arrangement, composition, writing melody, rhythm, lyrics. There's usually one or two guys who excel at the sound engineering piece. There's somebody who is really, really good at leading or conducting the group on stage. There's somebody who excels at organizing recording sessions. And of course, there's somebody who's got the business side of things nailed down, the bookkeeping and so on. These can be doled out equally among the band members, and oftentimes they are. But sometimes one or two band members take on the majority of these duties and end up becoming the leaders in that respect. That means the rest of the band essentially becomes sidemen and they're just there to play their instruments. Even when a band says, no, we share the load equally. Do they really? I mean, let's face it. Lennon and McCartney led the Beatles. Pete Townsend is the leader of The Who. Roger Waters ended up leading Pink Floyd, at least, until he didn't. Now, what's one other thing that those guys had that maybe set them apart from the rest of their bandmates? Well, that's the next part of that Army definition of leadership: purpose, direction, and motivation. I think what you're going to find is that these guys had the vision for what they wanted the band to do, be, and achieve. Lennon and McCartney both had a great idea of where they wanted to take the Beatles. They disagreed on that direction, and the music that they wrote in the later years separately really reflects that. But they were the leaders of that band. Pete Townsend had big ideas for The Who, And you can see how it resulted in their greatest thematic works, Tommy and Quadrophenia. And when Roger Waters took over in the wake of Syd Barrett's dismissal from Pink Floyd, his creative process became the driving force in that band during what many argue is the best phase of their existence. All of them had great skills in a lot of those things I named, but they also had the vision. They understood where their band was, where it needed to go, or where they wanted it to go. And they had a great idea on how to get it there. Sometimes making those changes involves drastically changing styles of music. It involves hiring or firing people. It involves changing how you write and how you create. But that's what leaders do, is they accomplish the mission. They improve the organization. They form the ideas that form the songs, that form the albums that get played on tours. They have to keep the band together to accomplish this. And they have to make the music at some point, because that's the product. So accomplishing the mission is just the day-to-day operation and the management of the band. And that's another place where a leader is needed. Somebody has to make sure that the gigs are got, that the set lists are listed, that people get paid at the end of the gig. Hopefully, what you're also doing with your direction and motivation is making sure that everybody continues to improve. You're improving the organization. We get a little bit better, a little bit tighter. We learn new songs. We go in different directions. We're stretching in some way. All of these things together are how a leader influences a band. But do you have to be the leader of a band to have a hand in this? Yes, maybe, maybe not. Let's take one of the situations I'm in right now. I'm in a alternative indie Latin rock punk thing band called the Michael Carlos Band. And as you might guess, the named leader of this band is Michael Carlos. He is the one who decides what gigs we're going after. He decides when we're writing songs and generally what those songs are going to be. He has the overall vision for the music that he wants to accomplish. Now, over 13 years of playing with him, I've come up a lot in the responsibility and the possibilities that I have in this band. I'm one of his main writing partners now on a lot of this music. We decide the direction of the music together. We do arrangements. I make a lot of suggestions along the way, both rhythmic and melodic, by the way. We do themes and lyrics together, and then I'm the primary person who's doing the artwork, the album art, the promotional work on the backside. Now, I don't have to do any of that. Maybe that's a level of leadership I don't need to take on in this band, but it plays to my talents. It's something that needs to be done, and he's very happy to have the help. Now, our third member is Mingo Gonzalez, who's an amazing bass player, but he's also a leader in his own right. He's an incredible multi-instrumentalist. He's taught music. He's played in several other bands with a variety of instruments, and he's led bands in musical projects, most notably in local musical theater. At the end of the day, he just wants to participate. He just gets to take a breather and rock out. In another playing situation I'm part of a church praise and worship team. I've played there for almost as long as I played with the Michael Carlos Band. And so based on my long experience there and my musicianship, I'm an informal leader. I help out with everything from picking out songs, deciding on arrangements. I help conduct from the drum riser when needed. And that's because a lot of the rest of the musicians that are in the praise and worship team have been there a lot shorter time than I have. And they have a lot of different skill levels. And so it helps to have somebody like me helping to run things on the day-to-day. That way the musical director can concentrate on bigger things. All of these things are their responsibility, but they've delegated to me. And so I have a minor leadership role, but it's a leadership role. Do I have to do this? No, I could just show up and play drums again. But I can, and it's helpful, and it improves the organization. In another scenario, I'm in that classic rock covers band. And this is my show up, play, and rock out situation. I take 0% leadership in this band. I don't need to. Everything else is being handled. I am just going to show up and have fun and not stress about anything. But does that mean I'm any less talented? Look at the other situations I'm in and the leadership roles I'm taking. I would argue no, it doesn't. It's just not needed for that band. Now let's head back to the original post. The OP is stating, the genre such as jazz, 95% of the drummers, if not more, are session musicians, both live and in studio. None of them have ever worked on anything with them at the center of a project. A large proportion of them spend their lives and talents serving third parties. Okay, I think you're grossly overestimating the number of drummers who are not leaders or creative forces in some project. When I sat down and started writing this script, I just decided to take 2 minutes, and I came up with 11 names in 2 minutes. And you can probably come up with even more. Art Blakey, Jack DeJohnette, Roy Haynes, Dave Weckl, Mark Juliana, Brian Blade, Eric Harlan, Cindy Blackman Santana, Nate Smith, Peter Erskine, Tony Williams. Tony Williams. That's just the first 11 I can think of. There are hundreds more. Lots more. In jazz, a genre such as jazz, I think drummers as band leaders and project leaders probably happens way more than it does in other genres of music. And this is because jazz is dense. Jazz is a very complex art form with a lot of history and a lot of knowledge that has to happen on stage. It's just much more likely that a jazz musician, no matter what their instrument is going to be more versed in the academic and theoretical side of the music. They're going to understand a lot more theory, composition, improvisation than most other genres of music. They're going to be steeped in a lot of the standards and history of the art form because they're expected to display that knowledge all the time on the gig. So that gives a jazz drummer a huge advantage in composing, arranging music, and directing the style of a band or a project, even if they don't play a melodic instrument at all. Since a lot of jazz is instrument driven, even if it has vocals, it's also easier to lead a band from the drum throne in jazz than it is in popular music. Most pop or rock drummers who turn to out-and-out leading bands as the driving creative force usually will either turn to singing or grab a guitar. Very few lead from the drums. Probably the most notable drummers as band leaders in modern music today are Phil Collins and Dave Grohl. However, it's worth mentioning there are a few drummers throughout pop and rock who have led from behind the drums, and notable among these are Questlove with the Roots, Levon Helm with the band, and Don Henley with Eagles. Now, absurd waste of talent? Okay, you may not think of Gavin Harrison, Neil Peart, or Stuart Copeland as leaders of their respective bands. But boy, I think we're way off base calling them absurd wastes of talent. Although, to be fair, Gavin Harrison co-wrote with 05 Rick and led that composition. Neil Peart organized the Burning for Buddy sessions. And Stuart Copeland, of course, has become a very renowned film composer in his own right. All this to say, the longer a drummer works in the music industry, I think the more likely it is that they'll find some way to become a leader of some kind. And eventually, they may even choose to completely lead a project. They're people too. They have dreams and desires, and they want to achieve more with their instrument and with the art form in general. I know that I still, at 50 years old, have a burning desire to write original music. And someday, that's going to transcend the situations I'm in, and I'm going to get some friends together, and we're going to write music together, and I'm going to lead it. And we're going to record it, and we're going to play it, and we're going to have great fun. And so I guess that means I can be a leader too. Yay me. But what if I don't? Am I really talent wasted? You know, let's look back at the Michael Carlos band. Okay, this is a band that does something different almost every song of every album. On the last few albums, there have been blues numbers, ragtime jazz, Mexican cumbias. In our most recent work together, we've written a couple of straight-ahead 80s pop songs. An ode to REM in their circa Document and Green mid-period, and a couple of things that I can only call punk songs. One's kind of like Green Day, and the other one's kind of like a protest punk song. And I was key in determining what those songs would be like and look like and sound like. It wasn't just, oh, here's what the song is, come up with the drum part to it. No, we were writing together, and I was shaping that music as a co-creator. I didn't have to lead the band to do that. I was a collaborator. I was a co-leader. I was a co-creator. I certainly have a lot more agency and responsibility in that music than, say, in the cover band. It's still his music. It's still his name on the album, even though I did the cover art, so technically I put his name on the album. So there may be many cases where you're in a collaboration or you're in a band framework and you share some leadership duties or you have creative outlets, and that's going to scratch all your musical itches, and that's fine. And it may work that way for many years. I mean, Ringo is happy singing one song on every Beatles album. And Gavin Harrison, no matter where he goes, gets to be uniquely himself, even when it's with a noted leader and control freak like Steven Wilson leading the band. My point is, this isn't a binary thing. It's not like the army where you eventually have to become a leader or you have to get out. It's not like you're either a leader or you're not. There's many shades of leadership in music. And then there's plenty of drummers who never assume leadership of any kind. And they just make music, they get their paychecks, and they laugh all the way to the bank on the way to their zillion-dollar homes. Your results may vary. Some people are just going to be fine with just showing up, playing drums, and getting paid, and having fun that way. And that's fine. That's all they want out of life, but I don't think we can call them absurd wastes of talent. I mean, if you want to walk up to Kenny Aronoff and tell him he's an absurd waste of talent, you go right ahead. I double dog dare you. Hey, thanks for talking about this with me. I really appreciate all your likes, your subscribes. Make sure you enable your notifications. I'm looking forward to putting out more new content this summer and later on this fall. Thanks for watching Al's Drum Hang, and I'll see you next time.